Friday, the final day of the week. These are the voyages of the program Unsportsmanlike Conduct. Its ongoing mission to explore strange new movies, to seek out new bits and new edifications, to boldly go where no radio program has gone before. Oh, Elkent's Movie Club. It's Elkent's Movie Club. Elkent's Movie Club. It's Elkent's Movie Club.
With Kent Wolgamott of the Lincoln Journal-Star. Kent, good afternoon.
Hello, gentlemen.
It is Oscar weekend.
Yes, it is.
Oscar weekend, and our movie today features one of the Best Actor nominees, The Sound of Metal. You can join us, by the way, live on Stibbs TV. We're streaming live, and as a public service, I have posted the Cubs Brewer score. I'll continue to update that as it continues here this afternoon.
Oh, nice.
I thought that was a fantasy.
See, you joke, Kent, but that's
a real score.
That's a real score of a real game that's happening.
I hope our boss
really
is
right
watching
now.
on Stibbs
Yes,
TV right now.
Yes. So, but yeah, Sound of Metal. This was Stibbs' suggestion, and Stibbs, why don't you give us the quick synopsis? It's a pretty simple story, right?
Yes, it is.
It's about a heavy metal drummer who is in a duo band with his significant other.
Mm-hmm.
She's the singer. He plays guitar. He plays the drums. And pretty quickly into the movie, he starts to have some hearing issues. They travel the country on a very, small little RV. Really cool RV, by the way. Like,
it's like
kind of crappy
studio,
but it's like an old school, Airstream. Like, it's pretty badass. But they're on like a, do-it-yourself tours. And like the second show they show up to in the movie, he starts having these weird little kind of sharp high pitched frequencies in his ears, and the way that the audio is done in the movie I thought was really cool, how throughout the whole thing, which I'm sure we'll talk more about. But you can hear it from his point of view, starts to go out, comes back, goes out, and then he wakes up the next morning and he essentially almost can't hear anything at all. Everything's super muffled. And the rest
25% hearing.
So yeah, it was like 26 in one ear, 24 in the other. He had basically nothing. That's what he was listening to.
Which is the problem when you're in a band.
Yeah, the rest of the movie is really just him coping with that. He's also a recovering heroin addict and had been clean for 4 years. And so his girlfriend and bandmate was worried that this would kind of send him off the deep end. So they took him to a rehab center essentially for deaf people, so he could kind of learn sign language, he could communicate with people and still stay clean and not relapse into his old ways. So it basically follows from there on how he handles being a musician and going deaf and trying to decide if he wants to have this surgery or not.
He wants the cochlear implants,
correct,
which he eventually gets.
He does. And then he wanted to get back to his girlfriend and continue his band. It was very obvious he wanted to. They were on their way to make an album, and they had this tour booked, and he had basically just paused his life. And after all of this, he wanted to get right back to it. So
yeah,
then it moves on from there. I don't want to give too much away at the end. Not that there's a ton, but
no, but I thought it's a very simple movie, and I made mention earlier when we were kind of setting up the show, this the way that they portrayed the hearing loss.
Yes.
First of all, it's really good filmmaking, and this is just a me thing, so don't take this as a criticism, but it was kind of disturbing for me.
I agree. It hurt
because it and part of it was I've got my subwoofer sitting over on the shelf, which is, close to where I was sitting when I was watching this. And they really do. I mean, they take out all the sound and it's basically mimicking what he's hearing. And it's very muffled. and it's very low and it's very bassy, and you just hear the reverberation of my subwoofer. And they didn't do the whole movie like this, but there would be certain scenes where it would pop in and out, because he's obviously still able to talk. But in order to communicate with him, you either got to write something down or have the voice to text on your computer, whatever the case may be. And so I got to admit, I spent about the first half hour, 45 minutes. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to make it through this if this is the way it's going to be.
Well, and I want to add something real fast, too. I don't know if you guys noticed this, and I know we talked and joked about this a few weeks ago. I actually turned the subtitles on for this movie like 5 minutes in, because I thought early it was almost preparing us for what was to come, because as they're in the bus,
I turned it on right then too.
They're talking and you can barely hear them.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like the muffled sound of what it would be later. It was just the bus was loud. And so I was like, you know what?
Mix.
I'm just going to turn on the subtitles, because I'm guessing that this is a very purposeful choice. And sure enough, I mean, later on in the movie, you know, and when, I don't know if you had them on, John, but later on when they're talking and you can hear it just as muffled words, muffled sounds, muffled bass, whatever it was.
Yeah, because that's the intent, is to give you the feeling of how it was.
And I didn't really think about that, Josh, but you're right. I wonder if they purposefully kind of made the ambient noise more noticeable, so that when they did take it out, it was even more noticeable.
It was really noticeable.
That may have been the case.
Yeah.
And they call what this technique point of hearing is the audio technique, is what it's called. And it's been used in a few other movies, but never to this extent. And part of the idea is, okay, quick background. My wife is a interpreter, sign language interpreter, and has studied deafness, has a master's degree. So, and I'm around a lot of deaf people. I can sign just enough to make an idiot out of myself. So 2 or 3 things. One, that's what happens when you lose your hearing, is those sounds can be very loud and voices become very hard to hear. And then as your hearing deteriorates, then those loud sounds go away, and it all becomes this muffled mess. And a whole lot of deaf people aren't actually completely deaf. They hear some low tones and feel something, but you can't make it out as language. And most of them, if they were born deaf, never learned the language, right? They learned sign language. The thing about this movie, which, by the way, is nominated for Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Supporting Actor, and Best Sound. This is an Oscar-winning movie. It will win the Oscar for sound, no matter what.
Yeah.
Best Screenplay as well. Is that it really does capture something of that deaf culture, which has never really been done before on screen. And you know, the guy who plays the, what do you want to call him, head counselor, Joe, is actually, he's a CODA, a child of deaf adults. His name is Paul, what's the last name? Just went blank.
Paul Racy.
And he'd have bit parts in movies, kind of really never had a career that took off. And so he actually works as sign language interpreter as well.
Okay.
So what he's doing is the real thing there, right? And if you know sign, he's really signing. And Riz Ahmed, who plays the drummer, spent hours learning ASL. He also had to learn to play drums. And all the rest of the actors in the deaf parts of the movie are actually deaf people. And the whole thing was filmed in Massachusetts. They say it's Missouri, but it was actually shot in Massachusetts. And there were interpreters all over on the set and all of that. And it really works. And interestingly, the deaf culture is a little bit split on it.
Really? Why is that?
They like very much the portrayal of the culture
Mhm.
and of that situation. And they like one of the things that this shows is how you have to, that sign language is a language and you
Yeah.
have to learn it, and it isn't easy,
Yeah.
right? And but what they don't necessarily like is the way that it presents the cochlear implant, which is the thing they put in and bypass the cochlea, and it can restore some sound, but it's kind of presented as a binary choice. Either you get it or you don't. And actually, those decisions are a little more complicated than the way it's presented. But it's a movie, so it has to be sort of given a yes or no kind of thing. But they also, and audiologists say this as well, what they show when he gets the cochlear implant and also during the time that he's going deaf is very much what the audiologists believe the sound is that these people actually hear. So all of that really made that movie maybe connect with me a little more.
Oh yeah.
Simply because of my, the world that I'm around a lot of deaf people. So the world that I've been in, it really connects, and it's so realistic. And when he's out with those kids, and finally starts to learn to sign and bond with the kids, that's what happens. I coached a deaf Special Olympics basketball team for years. And once you got to where you could sign with them, it really was it's a really special thing for me. It was.
Yeah, a couple things off of what you just said, Kent. So Stibbs mentioned it when he did like kind of the run through of the movie. I was very surprised just going in and what I expected, that they kind of hopped right into him essentially leaving this band and going to live with this community and trying to overcome his addiction. And also that I loved that line of like, here's what you're going to do today. Learn to be deaf. Learn how to be deaf. And so I was surprised at how fast it jumped into that. But you also said something a couple minutes ago about showing this type of culture and how we don't see it very often. I thought that the first dinner scene was so cool.
I was going to say the same thing.
And so unique because I've never seen something like that in film before. My best friend growing up, his dad was born deaf. And so I spent the night at his house a million times. I was around his dad. His parents were divorced, but he was around. And so he was somebody who couldn't really speak, but obviously he could sign. And so I learned some words and I learned the letters. But I was never around him and other people who were deaf as well. And so I thought that was a very powerful scene to show like they're joking, they're laughing,
how they are around each other, like laid back,
they
smacking each other
over a drink, and they're all like, "Oh, here we go again." And I just thought that was a very unique moment in film. Once again, something I haven't really seen before.
And the contrast of showing that again after Ruben had become more comfortable and learned some more sign. The first one, he's sitting there like, what the hell have I gotten myself into?
Saying,
He's terrified. They're banging on the table. They're doing all sorts. And this look on his face is just like, what in the world's going on?
Yeah.
An hour later, they show it again, and he's right there with them, talking, laughing, doing whatever. It was great.
Yeah.
And having been in the Lincoln Association for the Deaf and actually the Nebraska Association for the Deaf, which is and I think Omaha, all have like Christmas dinners, Thanksgiving dinners and stuff. And I've gone to those dinners, and the only hearing people in there are me, Carla, and the little kids, the who's have deaf parents. And that experience where he had in the first, like, what are they talking? I have all the time.
Yeah.
And it is the other thing I think that we need to say about this movie is how well it's acted by, those nominations are well deserved. I mean, that to watch him go through what he did.
Yeah.
I think his acting, they shot this chronologically, by the way.
Okay.
And interestingly, the two actors had never met before the day they shot their first scene. Deliberately.
Her and him?
What's that?
Her and him?
No, you're talking about Joe? Joe and
Ruben.
Okay.
had never met.
Interesting.
And so that introductory scene was filmed on the first day that they met each other. So they were really feeling each other out, literally, while this was going on, adding to that authenticity. But I thought it was both masterfully acted, and in a normal year, I would think either one of those guys would have a good chance of winning the Oscar. But this isn't a normal year, because Best Actor, you have Chadwick Boseman, who is nominated posthumously for the Ma Rainey's Black Bottom movie, his last movie. The odds of him winning simply because of that are really high. And in supporting actor, you have Jason Kaluuya, who is nominated for playing Fred Hampton in Judas and the Black Messiah, and that's really a lead role, but it's in the supporting actor category, and I can't imagine that he won't win. But otherwise, those are right up there with some of the best performances of the year that I've seen.
I thought he was great in that role. I haven't seen a lot of the other ones. I haven't seen the Chadwick Boseman movie, or the other one, but I thought he was awesome, especially towards the end, after he gets the implant and him dealing with John. When you were talking about the sound being an issue for you,
oh man,
it was later on when he got the implant that I was like, I was having to turn it way down, and I'm sure it's on purpose because it tries
to make you feel uncomfortable.
It hurt, like it was extremely high pitched, crackly frequencies,
and it hurts emotionally too, right?
Yeah, it does. It sounded basically the best way I could describe it. It sounded like when you used to tune in old-fashioned AM radio and you weren't quite in on the signal, but you could hear it well enough. You could understand it, but it was very staticky,
right into your brain.
Yeah, he's thinking like, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to go right back out onto the tour, and it's like
he didn't ask.
Mind.
He had his mindset. He didn't ask what it was going to sound like. He just thought, I'm going to fix it and I'm done. And the look on his face when the audiologist told him, this is what it is.
This is as good as it's going to get.
That's the stuff I'm talking about with him. Is he did a great job with that stuff. And then at the end with his girlfriend, where he realizes that, essentially, spoiler alert, turn it off if you don't want to hear it, that she's better off without him, and him dealing with that now that he's, all of it was just that. The last 5 to 10 minutes of that movie were tough, amazing, but like, holy moly, heart-wrenching stuff.
By the way, last night, Riz Ahmed, the lead actor, and those of you who want a reference, he played the defector Imperial pilot in Rogue One. He was one of the characters in Rogue One.
He was also in The Night Of,
that was
HBO
the first time
miniseries.
Yeah.
Last night, he won the Film Independent Spirit Award for his role, and some thought that maybe that could be a precursor of him having a shot at winning on Sunday. But as you said, with Chadwick Boseman being in there, that's going to be a real difficult chore. But the fact that this is essentially an Amazon Prime exclusive, they had to do a certain amount of box office in order to get qualified, but this is essentially an Amazon movie, and he's one of the 5 nominees for Best Actor. It just shows you how much filmmaking has changed.
Well, and Amazon's done that too. Manchester by the Sea was an Amazon original movie.
Right.
Now, it had full theatrical release, but it was an Amazon Studios movie, and it was up for all sorts of awards.
Yeah, and they changed the rules a little bit because of the pandemic. So I don't even know if it ever played in a theater. Back to Stibbs's point about the ending. One thing that you want to add, though, from the deaf people's perspective, that ending has a different resonance. And the resonance is, I'm not broken, don't fix me.
Yeah, and I wonder, Kent, what you thought of the decision to make it, like you mentioned it earlier, to kind of seem like you're either fixed, quote unquote, fixed, or you're not. Because if I had a criticism about the movie, I thought that was a little on the nose of presenting it that getting your hearing back good, not getting it back bad, unless you're viewing it from the opposite perspective. I guess, what did you think of that choice? Was that deliberate or was that a mistake, do you think, by the director? Or both, I guess.
Both. I think it was both. I think it was deliberate because it makes that's the kind of choice that gets set up in film, right? Nuance doesn't play real well in film.
Yeah.
Nuance is life. And that's the major criticism that the deaf have of it, is that it set up that choice, and that choice isn't exactly the way it was presented, so to speak.
Well, and I think the way the conversation he had with Joe after he got the surgery, and Joe, I thought they did an okay job of him not necessarily saying that that's what he thinks or he believes, but that in the community that he's in and what he has set up for the people that are there with him, he needs it. He needs that trust, and he needs it to be that way in order for everybody to grow and learn in this area that he's presented for them, where he's not necessarily saying that it's bad for everybody all the time outside of here, but for what he's doing for the people that he has there, it just doesn't work out that way. So that was, I thought it was that was another one of those moments where it was one of the first ones where you were just like, holy moly, this is some tough stuff.
Really powerful scene.
Really getting along. He was just really starting to get along, like you said, with the kids. Yeah, he was offering him work. And for him to kind of run off and do that, you could tell it hurt Joe a lot. Yeah. Not even because of the surgery itself, just that he just vanished and came back and expected all this stuff.
Yeah, and he lifts up his hat and he shows it to him. Yeah.
And the way those two guys acted that was a very emotional scene. And I read an interview with Joe where he talked about he had an old acting coach that says, don't ever cry because then the audience won't.
Interesting.
And he said when they got done shooting that scene, he looked over, the director, the cinematographer, all these people were crying.
You could hear him choking up, but you could tell he was trying to hold back the tears,
and that was real. He said it was absolutely real. He would, because also about this guy, he was a Vietnam vet who lost his hearing in Vietnam, just like the character in the movie, and he is a recovering alcoholic.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
So they literally just wrote his life story into his character's backstory.
But the character was already written.
Yeah.
How weird is
right.
that?
Found the perfect guy for it.
The only change they made was the character as originally written was lost his hearing in Iraq.
That's right. Yeah.
Well,
I loved it. I mean,
it was a very solid movie. It really was. Like I said, it took me about a half hour in, just with the audio and everything else. But, once you get into the story and it was really eye-opening to experience a movie from the deaf perspective. It was, I thought it was very well done. I hope that Riz Ahmed, I'm rooting for him just because, that's one
I've always liked him.
Yeah. It was a very good movie. I credit Stibbs for the first normal movie I think he's ever chosen in our movie club, but it was very good.
Yeah,
it was very good. And it is streaming on Amazon Prime.
Only 2
The
hours.
Sound of Metal. And it's
it moves.
It's solid. It's very solid.
So,
all right. Go ahead. I was going to ask one question real quick, Kent. You mentioned ASL, American Sign Language. So there's a difference between American Sign Language and other countries?
Absolutely. Every country is different.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Okay. You see how we spell, K.
Okay. Well, that makes,
K-E-N-T, right? That's how you spell
Alphabet.
finger spell here. The British do it like this, where they point on their hand is where the letter is. Every country has different sign language. So there's British Sign Language, American Sign Language. American Sign Language is very similar to French Sign Language, in large part because Thomas Gallaudet, who came to the U.S. and founded the university that's for the deaf now, was from France. And so that culture transferred. There's sign language. Carla's been to South America, and there's different sign language in Bolivia and Costa
Man,
Rica,
that's fascinating because
places like
you
that.
would have thought if there was ever one universal language, and I get, spelling, because obviously not everyone uses the anglicized alphabet, but at least like common phrases and,
The words.
and words. You'd think if there was a common language that we could have in this world, it would be sign language, but apparently it's not that way. I did not know.
And so when we see stuff come on TV, news reports and stuff that have deaf things from around, she'll watch and she'll just say, "Oh, that's really different."
Interesting.
Well, next week.
Yeah, what are we doing?
So it's surprising to me that I think I've seen bits and pieces of this movie, but I've never seen the whole thing. It is the movie that put Eddie Murphy on the map as a movie star. 48 Hours.
I watched that a couple years ago for the first time.
48 Hours with Eddie Murphy and Nick Nolte. Of course, Beverly Hills Cop is when it really blew up for him, but this was the first one.
I bet I have seen that movie 40 times. I am not exaggerating. I
have not seen it.
And
Are you kidding me?
On
Amazon.
Yeah, I don't know, and I don't know why.
Where's it at? Is it on Amazon now?
It's on Amazon Prime.
Yeah. There's a new sheriff in town. His name's Reggie Hammond.
Oh, wait, never mind. I haven't seen this. I was thinking of Beverly Hills Cop. Okay, so I've never seen this.
Yeah,
either.
this was his first big picture. Was 48 Hours, and
it's one of the best. It's not really a cop buddy movie because Eddie's a convict that Nick Nolte gets out of jail to do the investigation, but it is a mismatched partners, and it's hilarious and dramatic and pretty violent, and both of them are great. I love that movie. So
awesome.
I look forward to it.
The movie poster has Eddie Murphy flipping off the camera of the picture of the poster.
What?
It's like an animated version. I have the camera up. I shouldn't do it. But yeah, if you just Google 48 Hours movie and look at the images, the actual movie poster is him just giving the bird right to the camera.
Look at that.
That's fantastic.
That's great.
So 48 Hours, it's on Amazon Prime. We will review next week. Real quick, Kent, before we let you go, predictions, main categories. Who do you think wins on Sunday?
Best Picture, Neverland.
Nomadland, which we reviewed here on the movie.
It is by far, like, I can't imagine anything else winning. It's that sort of prohibitive favorite. Which means that Chloe Zhao, who is the director, will win. I believe there's 15 times out of 70 times that the director has not won. The Best Picture and Best Director go together. I think Chadwick Boseman, obviously, Best Actor. Best Actress is the hardest one to pick. You have Viola Davis in Ma Rainey, and Audra Day in The People versus Billie Holiday. You've got Frances McDormand from Nomadland, but I think that Carey Mulligan, who is in the will win that one.
Okay,
and then Best Supporting Actress, and her name is going to escape me. I believe that it's going to be the grandmother from Minari, the Korean actress.
I've wanted to see that one.
It's very, very good, and she is great. If she doesn't win it,
it sounds like the woman from Borat might be
has a chance.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Very much. Maria Bakalova. Bakalova. And then I think Best Supporting Actor will be Daniel Kaluuya. But let's say this, if I was voting on that, I think I might have voted for Paul from
Sound of Metal. Paul Raci.
Raci, yeah. So those are the major ones. The Deadlock is the best animated film. We'll go to what, Josh? Soul.
So okay, good. My favorite movie of 2020.
That's what I'm saying. That's the Deadlock.
I love that movie, man. It is so good. If you have Disney Plus, it's like an hour and a half long. It is incredible. Oh, I love
And
it.
I'm surprised actually it didn't get a Best Picture nomination.
I thought so too. It's one of my favorite Pixar movies.
Yeah.
All right, there it is. The movie club for this week. Next week, it's 48 hours streaming on Amazon
Awesome.
Prime. Kent, we will reconvene next week. Have a great weekend.
You do the same and have fun watching that movie. Roxanne!
Later, Kent.
If it's half as much fun as the Cubs Brewers game,
Oh, yeah. What's the score now? It's still 15-2.
well, look
like
at
it says. Oh, there it is
look-
on our screen.
it's right there. 15-2. They're in the ninth.
You're right.
They're in the ninth. I think the Cubs will hold on and win this one. All right, One Beer Friday still to come, and we got more to add, so don't go nowhere. 1620 zone.